for coming in today to talk about your very important role with Alpha as the training and supervisor of the parenting mediation portion of Alpha. I guess we could talk a little bit about first, maybe about, kind of what that role means that you have with Alpha.
Sure. Yeah, I started with Alpha quite a few years ago, probably 20 plus years ago, as one of the mediators. I would meet with the parents to help them come to an agreement on what's best for their children in custody. And through the years, I've moved into training other mediators and now supervising them on their work. And I typically review each of the mediation agreements that they come up with before it is finalized.
I see, thank you. And maybe you could help us understand a little more clearly the difference between litigation and the mediation.
Yes, and there's actually quite a huge difference. In my other life, I run a program providing custody evaluations in litigated cases. And in all cases for the evaluator, or the mediator, the focus is trying to identify what's in the best interest of the children. A big difference is in mediated cases, you're working with parents who are really focused on working together in terms of coming up with what is best for their children. In the litigated cases, I would have to say in a huge majority of the cases, it's the parents battling one another. Unfortunately, lots of times they seem less focused on what is best for the children and more focused on winning their case, winning their situation, that sort of thing. So a big focus is trying to really work out and weed through, in a litigated case, what the parents are presenting and how does that reflect on what is best for the children.
Do children sometimes become kind of weaponized, do I hear you saying, maybe in a litigation where they're not placed at the forefront of the parents' life?
Unfortunately, in a lot of cases, the children are used as pawns in the battle between the parents. Not all cases, not all, but a far too significant number of them. I have done several hundred custody evaluations, and I almost always ask the children, if you had 3 wishes, what would you wish for? And I can tell you the vast majority of them, the child, at least one of those wishes is my parents were back together. I saw a boy 2 weeks ago, and he described how, this is a litigated case, and he described how it's much calmer now that his home is quieter since his parents aren't together and battling, how stressful it was on him battling. But when I asked him his three wishes, his first one was that mom and dad get back together again. So I think it's incredibly difficult on children where they're put in a position, and so often in litigated cases, they're put in a position where they feel like they're expected to choose between mother and father. And one of the things that if you want to give your children the biggest gift you can give them, and I'll tell you this is true in intact families, not just divorcing, separating families, is to convey to the child, you should love your other parent, to support the relationship with the other parent. And unfortunately, in a lot of cases, that's not what parents do when they're in litigated divorce situations. And sorry to go on, but I think at lots of times it's just the environment of court. It's a battle. A litigation is a battle between the parties. So each is trying to come up with things that will denigrate the other parent and make them look better. And children get caught in that battle, which then is very damaging to them, and they start to feel like no place feels safe.
And that's where mediation can be just such as you said, a gift.
Really, I think it is a real gift
to the
children.
child or children. I mean, many families have multiple kids, so all may be experiencing it differently. And do you have an example where you might think that you can recall of where mediation just was such a different experience than a litigated one?
Well, in mediation, I think the idea that the parents are coming together in agreement, and something that is really borne out is that when parents agree about custody, they tend to go with the program more. I agree to this, so I'm going to follow it. And also in that, they're working with somebody who's working with them. So if an adjustment needs to be made, they can talk to the other parent or go to a therapist and talk it out to make a decision about changing something. In litigated cases, that so often is not the case. One of the cases I did many years ago really stood out to me. It was a 12-year-old boy who was the child in the case. The parents had separated when he was 2 years old. They told me they were in court at least once a year, every year since then. And I think that's an example of how the battle can continue. And so any little issue comes up, one parent's filing contempt, the other responds in contempt.
And again, in mediation, that's not going to be the situation. It's going to be resolved. It's going to be settled in more or less a much more permanent way.
Yeah, ideally, but yeah, I wouldn't say permanent because adjustments need to be made.
Sure.
But if the parents have agreed on it, they typically have a much greater ability to come to agreement on changes.
They're more invested. Well, thank you so much. That's really been helpful to understand how parenting mediation is just such a key part.
It's important, though, to take a look at alpha in distinction from litigated cases. For example, a private custody evaluation is going to cost probably $10,000 or more. And that's only one piece of what is occurring in a litigated case. With alpha, the parents then are on their own devices to figure out finances, to figure out other aspects of their separation. And I think that's where alpha really provides a great service in that it's kind of a one-stop shopping. The first focus, and I think this is something I really respect about alpha, the first focus, the first meeting you have after getting introduced to the program is the child parenting plan. And I think that shows respect for how important the children are in this divorce situation and making them comfortable. But the program goes beyond that to help parents work together to come out with how they can be financially independent once they separate. That's huge changes that occur.
It's a very interdisciplinary program that you have with Alpha. It's, as you said, parenting top of mind, children.
And I think it really fosters parents working together rather than being in battle with one another.
The adversarial piece is, if not eliminated, greatly reduced.
Yeah, I believe so.
Well, thank you so much. This has been really helpful, I think, in helping folks understand all the importance of it and how it works.
Well, I think Alpha is a good program. I'm happy to support it.